Starship is going to be a massive failure, and here's why. Each Starship has 33 engines, and each engine has its own turbopump, and each turbopump has a failure rate of about 1 to 1.5%, and that's just baked in. Turbopumps have not gotten that much better over the course of the last 100 years or so we've been using them. Maybe a couple of percent improvement, but they're not going to get much better anytime soon. Now, the new estimate from NASA is that it's going to take 15 to 20 refueling launches so that Starship can fulfill its contract with Artemis. And then we just do the math. It's something like 500 or 600 engines that need to actually function in order to achieve its mission. And not every failure is going to be catastrophic. It won't be mission ending. But contrary to the belief of fanboys online, those engines are not redundant. And depending on how they fail, you might see something like we saw in the previous Starship test launch. Regardless, let's say all the engines work on all the missions and we don't have to worry about that. Well, we still got 15 to 20 refueling launches to do before it can complete a single contracted mission, right? To do this, you're going to need at least 2 Starship. The one in orbit and the one going up to refuel it. And despite Elon Musk's claim of $2 million a launch, we know that the actual cost is somewhere around the $1 billion mark. And so it's unlikely to assume that they're going to have a fleet of these ready, at least for the initial missions that it's contracted for. So I think a more realistic number to go off of is they'll probably have 2 or 3 ready. The quickest SpaceX has ever been able to turn around one of its Falcon 9 rockets from launch to relaunch is about a month. The Starship is much more complex than a Falcon 9 rocket, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they can turn around the Starship in a month. So operating on 2 Starship, where it needs to refuel 15 to 20 times in orbit, that's going to take almost 2 years of refueling while one Starship is in orbit in order to complete the same type of mission that a single SLS can do. And that's with no failure rate at all, of which we know there's going to be some because they're launching somewhere between 5 and 660 of these engines, all with a component in them with a baked in failure rate of about 1%. And so you can do the math, there's going to be some failures. And we know now over the last year that those launches have cost $1 billion a pop. That's unlikely to get better once they've reached full production. A crazy number to throw out going from prototyping to production would be cutting that cost down from $1 billion to $500 million, and that's very unlikely. But even if we use that number, now these missions are costing like $7 to $10 billion for a single Starship mission, and that's insane. And on top of all of that, Starship has no abort system. What does that mean? Well, it means that if you got people on this rocket and one of these failures occur and it ends up being catastrophic, the people on the rocket are kind of SOL. So let's recap. We have a rocket with 33 engines, each with a turbopump, each with a baked-in failure rate of 1 to 1.5%, launching 15 to 20 times over the course of maybe up to 2 years. And even with a conservative estimate of the price tag being $500 million a launch, which is half of what it's actually costing them right now to do it, a single mission using the Starship could end up costing up to $10 billion. And on top of that, if you put people on the rocket, there's no abort system, so if there is a failure, they're screwed. Taking all of that into account, Starship might end up being the most useless rocket ever made.